Well, hello and thank you for coming to my channel. This is going to be the tutorial for this folio booklet. It is a design team project for Country Craft Creations, and I'm using the Prima collection called Among the Wildflowers. And the way I'm going to make it is without any chipboard. If you want to substitute and use chipboard instead, you certainly can. But let me measure, I forget. This is about 6 inches by 9, I think. Yep, 6 by 9 book. Spine is about 1.5, okay? But like I said, there is no chipboard in here, but you could easily change that and have the lay flat method and then add the flaps to your chipboard cover instead. So just real quick, I'll show you in case you missed the walkthrough. There is a walkthrough tutorial or a walkthrough video, however. So you have a left and a right side that kind of mirror one another. You can see that I have similar flaps here, the butterfly that I cut in half. This is a booklet that I covered and put in a couple pockets on the front and the back so that I can journal and write. It's attached with a stretchy cord, and I punched 2 holes in the spine. This is a lift up feature that has a pocket. And then this is a little flap, and you can do journaling inside here or on the back, place for a picture. This then opens to the left. I have a thick, like an accordion pocket that has a little bit more depth, magnetic closure. This is for pictures, and my closure, I wanted it to be flat, so I just did 2 pieces that I glued. I made these thicker, but I glued them just a little bit on the edges so I could slide this in to keep the pages closed. And then they go up, and there's a flap that goes down. And then this is a waterfall for pictures. Okay, and then a pocket down here to add anything extra. So then to close it, sometimes this is a little bit challenging just because I did glue it a little bit more on the top and the bottom than I wanted to, but it's starting to loosen up a little bit. So, okay, so that's the left-hand side. The right-hand side is almost exactly the same. You still have that lift-up feature. You have a flap here with the place for a picture, and I have journaling here, and if you want to open that and do journaling, then this does flip open to the right also. This time I did a double pocket on the right hand side, and I used my punch board to give it a tab. And then this is a repeat of the waterfall here in the center. All right. So let's get started. I would recommend that you have a notebook handy. It's just faster for me, and I get them done much quicker if I just put sticky notes on my paper so that you know what sizes I'm using. As always, I recommend that you watch it all the way through first, just in case I have a oops. I'm not good at editing the videos, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start with the front, the covers and the flaps that you saw. Now we're going to attach this to a spine piece. I recommend that you use either 100%, not 100%, 100-pound cardstock from Country Craft Creations, so it's thicker and more durable. Or I'm using Craft Tex, which is what it's kind of like a fabric paper. Tammy used to carry it in the store. I don't think she carries it anymore, but I still had some, and I really like using that. So let's get started. This is an easy project that turns out really nice. I think it'd be a great gift. Especially Mother's Day is tomorrow. If I can get this loaded and you get it done before. Okay, let's start with 2 pieces. I'm using the light blue artisan cardstock. 2 pieces that are 6 by 10 and 2 that are 6 by 9. So that's the basic book, the basic pages. And then those 2 little flaps that went inside, you'll need 2 that are 5.5 by 10 and 2 that are 5.5 by 9. Okay, so there's the measurements. So the pieces that are 6 by 9, we don't do any scoring. And the pieces that are 5.5 by 9, we don't do any scoring. Okay, so then what we end up with is when we're done gluing, we have an open part here, and then this is open when we attach them. So I've done one of each to show you what it's going to look like when we're done. So you're going to start with the 6. Let me get that. We're going to start with the 6 by 10. And you're going to place your 6 by 10 so that the 10 inches is across the top, and you're just going to score it twice. Once at half and once at 9.5. You'll do that to both of your 6 by 10 pieces, and then take your 5.5 by 10 pieces and do the same 1/2 inch on each end with your long piece across the top. So 10 inches is across the top, and I'm scoring at 1/2 and at 9.5 for those. So let's work with those first. So you are going to want to burnish those scores. I always like a nice crisp burnish. And then same way with the other piece. Now you're going to obviously be doing this 4 times. I'm doing it twice because I already have one set made. Now I am going to slightly miter, not a whole lot, but just a little bit on each end so that if I don't get it on exactly straight, you don't see any paper hanging out the edge. And then before I glue, I am going to make sure that it lines up nice and neat in case I have to do any trimming. If I didn't trim it, cut my paper exactly the same. You know, sometimes with cutters, they're not exactly 100% accurate, or the person cutting is not always 100% accurate. All right. So then we'll get the 6 by 9 piece, and what's going to happen is we're just going to glue that on top of those 1/2 inch pieces. So this is where I kind of make sure that it's the right length and the right width. And really, it does look pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and glue one side at a time, or one end at a time, so that I can adjust as needed. So just put a line of glue here. I always like to make sure it gets to those corners. And I'm going to line it up here. And you're going to want to burnish that. Now, because we just did one end, you can also open it and burnish it on the inside. And then we'll do the other side. And you're going to want to do that flat. And I see that it's off just a hair now that I've glued it. So I'm going to adjust it like so. Paper, you can work with it so that you can kind of get rid of those measurements that don't line up exactly. You can use your burnishing tool to kind of flatten it out and make it work for you. All right, and I always like to have a dry wet wipe nearby in case I have a little bit too much glue. So that's the larger one, that's the main base, okay? So you'll have 2 of those. And then you're gonna have 2 of those smaller flaps. We make them a little bit smaller so that it doesn't when you open and close your book, they don't get bent. I'm gonna go ahead and slightly miter these also. Okay, not much, just a real skinny sliver. So then again, I'm gonna line it up and make sure that they work well together. See if I have to do any trimming. And I think it looks pretty good. So we can start the gluing. Line that up. If you prefer to use score tape, that will do just the same exact thing. So you do what works best for you. I like to use glue so I have a little wiggle room in case I need to adjust. And again, I'm going to go ahead and open it and burnish on the inside because we haven't glued the other side down. Okay, let's make sure it lines up. So once I glue it down, I might have to adjust by burnishing it a little bit differently. And some people like to put glue on at the same time, both ends. That doesn't work very well for me. You can also use your scoreboard as a way, you know, bump it up against your scoreboard to kind of help you line it up. So I have a little bit of a bubble. It doesn't lay flat because I need to adjust a little bit. So I'm just kind of flattening it out now that I've glued both ends. All right. So now you should have 2 of each there's 2 that are 5.5 by 9 and 2 that are 6 by 9. And that's what we're going to base all of our album folio off of. So at this point, you're going to want to get either 100-pound cardstock or just a real sturdy cardstock, because that's where you're going to be having all the, you know, closing and opening. It's going to get a lot of work, a workout. So we want to make sure it's durable. That's why I use the Craft Tex. Let's see. You'll need, I didn't write this part down, but let me give you the measurements. 2 pieces for the 2 smaller sides, the spines on the side, are 1.5 by 9. 2 that are 1.5 by 9. And then the main spine, you're going to need 1 piece that's 2.5 by 9. Okay? 2.5 by 9, and then 2 that are 1.5 by 9. So the pieces that are 1.5 by 9, you're going to place that in your scoreboard with the 1.5 across the top. And we want a 1/2 inch border, a 1/2 inch on the left and a 1/2 inch on the right. And then we do a 1/4 in the middle. So score it at 1/2. And because this is Craft Tex, you go over it several times because it is a little bit thicker. Then I'm also going to score at 1. So 1/2 and at 1. And you want a score in between those two so that it's a little bit more flexible. And so go ahead and score it 3/4 also. Okay, so 1, excuse me, 1/2 was the first one. Then you're going to do it at 3/4, then at 1. Okay, do that to both pieces. And then the 2.5 inch piece is the same. You're going to want a 1/2 inch on the left and a 1/2 inch on the right. So go ahead and do your 1/2 inch first. And then I like to go do the other 1/2 inch on the other side so I can see the middle 1/4 pieces and know when to stop. So then I'm going to also go at the 2 inch mark and score at a 1/2. Okay, and so now we'll do a 1/4 increment in between those. So starting with 3/4, then at 1, 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 1 3/4, and then you already have that 2 inch done. Okay. So because I'm using, it's thicker, I like to bend it, burnish it on both sides to make it more flexible. Again, you should be using a thicker paper. You don't want it to crack, however, so you may not want to do the back and forth as much as I am, but because this is a fabric paper, I can do that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and burnish on the 1/2 inch. And this is thicker, so I gotta get in there. And I'm gonna go ahead and reverse it. And just kind of use my hands. Okay, now I'm gonna go do that other 1/2 inch piece on the opposite side. And I'll just kind of use my hands to bend it back the other way. And now let's do that middle piece in between. And I am going to bend it back on itself. And then what I do is I kind of roll it like so. So it's more rounded. Now we are going to miter on the 1/2 inch pieces on both ends. So a little snip here and there. And a snip there. And there. Okay, so a very slight miter. And I'll do that with my other one also. Okay. Let's prepare the main one by doing our scoring. I like to do the 1/2 inches first. I don't know why. So I'll do one side. And I like to bend it back on itself. And then I'll do the other 1/2 inch on the opposite end. And now we do all those little 1/4 inch pieces in between. It is a little bit harder on craft text to see the score mark because it is so thick. So I'll go all one direction and then I'll go back and bend it the opposite direction. I feel like I'm missing the score mark on it. Nope, I got it. Okay, next one. Now I have not, I mean, you could try it with a different weight paper and maybe the 85-pound artisan would work better. Maybe it wouldn't crack it. I'm not really sure. I haven't used it, so I don't know. But you could always try it and let me know how that turned out. I like the rounded look of the spine when it's done. Now, if you're doing chipboard, you would just do the regular lay flat method. Your spine piece would be 1.5, and the covers would be 6 by 9, and I'd still use paper then for the flaps on the inside. Maybe you want to use lightweight chipboard instead of the heavyweight if you're doing a chipboard cover. All right. So now I'm just going to kind of roll it. So it, all right, and we're going to go ahead and snip on the 1/2 inch again to give it a little miter. Now we're ready to do some attaching of the base pages. So I'm going to work with the 6x9 pieces first, and what we do is we slide a 1/2 inch piece into the opening like so, and we go to that first score mark. And I'm doing a dry fit first. Okay. All right, and that fits just fine. So now I'm going to put glue on both sides of that 1/2 inch, not just one side. So that it closes off that book. And I would not use tape on this part, so that you can have some wiggle room time and have your wet wipe or your cloth nearby in case you have any glue oozing out. Okay, we got one attached. And I'm giving it a real strong burnish. And now we'll attach the other side of the spine to the other 6x9 piece. Do a dry fit first. Yep, it's going to fit just fine. So I'm going to put my glue on both sides of that 1/2 inch. This one I might have a little oozing because I got kind of carried away with the glue. And I'm going to slide that 1/2 inch into the page here. Yep, I'm going to have some ooze. Oops. And then now the other side. Okay, yep, I got some coming out there too. And then just burnish it real well so it has a strong hold. Okay, and there is our cover. And you'll notice we still have openings on the other end, and that's to attach the next spine pieces to our flap. So you can attach the 1/2 inch just like we did before on one of the sides, and then we'll attach the other side to close that off on the end here. We will eventually close this off too by gluing it shut. So I think I'll attach it to my book first. Dry fit, always do a dry fit. And that goes until you get to the first score mark. Does that look good? I think that's gonna work, okay. Glue on both sides. And you're gonna want the curvy piece, the curvy side out, if that makes sense. So I want, the curve is on the top here. I'm going to slide this in until it gets to that first score mark. I think I'm going to slide it in. There we go. Okay, let's give it a burnish like we did before. rid of any excess glue. And now I'm just going to go ahead and attach the other spine piece to the other side of our base. And that looks good. Okay. Slide it into that first score mark. Let's see. All right. Okay, it's looking good. And now we attach the flaps. Dry fit. We glue it down to the first score again. And that looks good. Yep, it's going to be fine. So I just glue one side first. I'll glue it closed after it's attached to the book. I almost glued the wrong thing. So I'm going to go ahead and put glue on the 1/2 inch piece on the front and the back of it. And let's slide that in. To the first score. Oops. Okay, does that look about right? Yep. Okay. So at this point is where I'm going to go ahead. Now, if you wanted, you could even add another flap going inside again. Because this is open, you could do the same thing. Just add another spine piece. I want this one closed and sealed, so I'm going to put glue along the edge. And I'll just seal that shut. All right. Repeat on the other side. Make sure that it is going to fit. Yep, okay. Almost done with the base. Slide it on. Stopping at that first score. One and two. Does that look about good? Yep, looks good. Got a little discoloration there. I don't know what that's from. And let's go ahead and seal this one closed next. Oops. Okay, base is done. And so that's where we're at so far, okay? If you're working through this and you have questions, just go ahead and drop them in the comments down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I see it. We're ready to move on to the next. So this is for the flap that goes up. So let me show it to you. It's easier, I think, sometimes if you can see what I'm talking about. So we're doing these flaps right here, okay? So your measurements, you'll need 2 that are 5.5 by 9.5, and 2 that are 6.5 by 4.5. I use a scrap piece of paper, and so when I show you, you're gonna be like, oh, that doesn't look right. I used a 4 1/8 inch piece instead of wasting paper, but normally I would use 6.5 by 4.5. Okay, that in case you were wondering why mine was so skinny on the score. So what we're going to end up with, we're going to do the flap that goes up, and then we'll have a pocket at the base. Okay, now I wait to put my pocket on so I know exactly where to put it so that it lays flat. I don't want to get too close to the score, so I'm going to go ahead and hold off on that. You can find a decorative punch. You could use a corner rounder. You can leave it flat or straight across, totally up to you. But let's go ahead and do our scoring. So you'll need to take the 5.5 by 9.5 inch pieces, place the 9.5 across the top, and just give it a score at 1/2. That's it. Now the 6.5 by 4.5 is a pocket, so you do a 1/2 on all 3 sides. So starting with the 6.5 across the top, you can score at 1/2, and you can score at 6, and then you'll turn it this way so that the 4.5 is across the top, and you'll score at 1/2. Again, mine is a little bit different because I'm using a scrap piece of paper. Not scrap, but I had leftovers and didn't want to waste it. So when we do pockets, we're going to go ahead and miter the top on the 1/2 inch. And we're going to take out the square in the corner by angling it like so. Don't cut into that corner. You want to have a nice crisp corner. And then on the larger piece, go ahead and miter on the 1/2 inch on both sides. Time to do our burnishing on all the sides, nice and flat. Okay, so you'll have 2 pockets. Let's burnish the flap itself. And at this point is where I am going to do my punching, or my border punch. So I just center it. So I start in the middle, and that looks about centered, like so. Give it a punch. Then I scoot it over and line it up with those marks. Now I am going to leave that little piece, and I'm going to trim it off. Line it up. I can't see it. There we go. And I'm just going to trim it off like so. I'm sure you have, well, I'm not sure, but I would think everybody has some sort of punch in their material, or, in your craft supplies. If not, you don't have to have one. All right, so we're going to grab our book. we're gonna put the flaps, when you open it, my flap is closed and I'm putting it on the top of that flap. And I wanna do a dry fit to make sure it's not too long. And it's not. And I wanna look side to side. Make sure it lines up nice. Looks pretty good. Let's glue it down. You just put glue on the outside 1/2-inch piece, not the inside like we were doing on the book base. And I'm actually going to open this up so I can see it better. And I'm looking to make sure it's lined up on either side. And I'm going to open it up and burnish it on the inside also. So we do want to put a pocket then. When I lift up the flap, we want the pocket to be right here. So I'm going to place glue on the 1/2-inch pieces, and I'm going to go close to the score, but not over. I'm giving myself about a 1/16 of an inch away so that it still lays flat, okay? If you get too close to the score, it might buckle a little bit when you try and close it. All right. Close to the score, but not right at the score. And I'm looking to see that I'm lining it up side to side also. All right. One side done. If you're using art glitter glue, it's nice that it does dry clear in case a little bit does ooze out. Okay, so we have this side done. Now we're going to close this side and do the other one here. Make sure that it is gonna line up, and it will. So again, I'm gonna open this to make it easier, and I also have it so that the top is facing me so I can see it better when I glue it down. And I forgot to miter this one. So if it looks confusing on the video, remember mine is, the top is facing me so that I can see it better. Go all the way to the edge. And before I push down too much, I'm going to lay it down to make sure it lines up side to side. And then I give it a burnish. Go ahead and open it and burnish it on the underside too. So now we have our two flaps. Time to put the other pocket on. So we lift up the flap. Again, not over the score. Just give yourself a tiny space between the score and where you're putting the pocket. So the purpose of that is just so it lays flat and lays nicer and doesn't buckle when you close it. Okie dokie. Now, you might be a person who likes to put your pattern paper on first. Sometimes I do that, but because I'm doing the video, I'll go back and put my pattern paper on later to shorten the video. But a lot of times I do like to put my pattern paper on before I attach things. All right. Are we good? See how fast this goes? Okay. Next. So let's see. we have this. Now, when you do the flap, that's what we're going to do next. I think, wait a minute, what's this? Yes. Why does it say 4? Hold on, I gotta figure out what piece this is. Oh, nope, these are, okay, this is something else. I tried to get organized and oh, what is this? Hold on, what am I doing? Open it up. Did I cut something wrong? These don't look right. Okay, got it. I got it. Okay. Jeez Louise. We need 2 that are 3.5 by 6 1/8. And that is going to be for this flap right here. Okay. And then I just used one of the tags from the collection, the tag pad. And I'll do this one with you to show you how I did it. It's not tough. And then I just did some layering. I used some of the ephemera. I just used a heart punch, and did a piece of the coordinating paper. It's got a little sparkle. I cut out, or I used a butterfly and traced around it to make the opening here. So let me pick out 2 tags. That's 2 that I haven't used. I haven't used this one. And I'll use this one. So I'll use those 2. Obviously, you don't have to have tags, but because I have it, it makes it nice and handy. Okay. All right. Now that I know what I'm working with here. So again, 2 that are 3.5 by 6 1/8. Again, I didn't want to waste paper, so mine's a little bit shorter. And then 4 that are 6 by 5 1/4, and those are going to be flaps that go up and down. Okay. All right. So the pieces that are 3.5 by 6 1/8, you're going to want to score at half. I'm scoring at 1/4 because mine is a different measurement. I hope that's not confusing people. So yours is 3.5 and you score at a half. With the 3.5 inches across the top, score at 1/2. Do that on both pieces. And then the pieces that measure 6 by 5 1/4, place the 5 1/4 across the top, and we're going to score at 1/2. And at 3/4, we need a gusset so that our book lays nice. So a 1/2 and 3/4. You're going to do that on all 4 pieces. So 1/2 and 3/4. Okay, do that to all 4. So I did choose to corner round my pieces that measured 6 by 5 1/4. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. On the 2 ends opposite of the score marks. You could angle cut it. You can leave them flat. You could use your border punch and do a decorative border if you want. And so now we're going to burnish all of those score marks. And we are mitering on the 1/2 inch. Don't cut into your gusset, the 1/4 inch piece, just the 1/2 inch piece at a slight angle. Like so. This is intact. Nothing was cut off there. so that you can see that's going to be our gusset. Okay. Snip and snip. All right. Usually I design as I go and I record as I go. This time I made a book first and worked out all the kinks and then I'm now making a second one. But usually I just design as I go and record as I go. So hopefully I've got everything worked out so we don't make any silly mistakes. But that's just part of it too. I mean, there's always going to be a mistake here or there. Oops, I already did that. Okay. So let's get our other one. I just have one more to score. Yours is going to look different because you have the right size piece. I have a very tiny piece here, or a shorter one. Okay. So the smaller ones that are 3.5 by 6 1/8, we're going to glue that. When you lift up this flap, it's going to go on the left-hand side, and you can center it with like a Tim Holtz ruler. You can eyeball it, but our pages are 9, so the mid mark is 4.5. So I'm just going to put a little pencil mark at 4.5. I do want mine centered this time. Sometimes I just eyeball it. And 4.5. It would help if the pencil was... Okay, just a real light mark. And now with the 1/2 inch tucked underneath, I'm going to find the center of that. So this is 6 1/8. So really you need 3 1/16. I'm going to use, so 3 1/16 on each end there. Right there. So now I know to line up my little tick mark here onto the tick mark there, and then it's going to be centered. Okay, and then I'll go back and erase. And because of the paper that we're using, we can push down on that at the spine and it's not going to do anything. It's just it'll go right back into place. Oopsie. All right. That looks good. So now I'm going to burnish it. I prefer a 1/2 inch gusset. This one's kind of hard to work with. Okay, so if you don't have the tags, you can just leave it flat, squared like this, or you can do this if you have the tags. So this one's going to go on the right, so I need my scored piece tucked under, and it's on my right, and I'm going to glue this on. And then I'm going to, I'm going to do 2 more. I'm going to pick out 2 more tags and put them on the underside too. So I think they're all the same on the back. Yep, they all have the same color, so it doesn't matter which ones I take. So we're going to glue one on the front, one on the back. And then we'll do our angle cut. And you can punch a hole if you want. I did. And I put a piece of twine in there. So I'll show you that. This one's definitely easier to do before we attach it to the book. Kind of wish I would have remembered that on the other one, but I will go back and fix it. Okay. So now I want the lined piece on the other side. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to punch the hole first. That way it'll be easier for me to line up the other one. Let me get my hole punch. So I'm going to go ahead and punch the hole. And now I can line this one up in the right spot. I'll show you, I have what do I have? Another punch for reinforcing the holes that you can get, at least I got it from Country Craft Creations. I'll show you that one in a second. All right. And you can use pattern paper for your hole reinforcer or just your cardstock. But what I did then is I just sliced like so. Okay. Now, if you want to do the reinforcer, this is what it looks like. I'll see if I can find the link. I'm just going to use, what am I going to use? Do I have any scrap paper? You know what I have? I'm going to use this. This is from, this is the tonic paper. And I'm going to cut out 4 hole reinforcers. So one for the front and one for the back on both of them. So then you get those, and we'll glue that right on top of there. So I'm going to do 4 of them. And this will be easier to do now before we put it in our book. And then just put this right around that punch. And let's put one on the other side. And you can put your twine in, or ribbon, or seam binding. I did twine because it was thinner and skinnier, and so it didn't get in the way of, it wasn't too bulky. All right, let me save these 2 for the other one. So once again, I'm going to do my measuring. So I'm going to turn this sideways. I'm going to find the halfway mark at 4.5. And I'm going to find the center, which was 3 1/16 from the bottom. So now that we angle cut up here, I'm going to go 3 1/16 from the bottom. And I'll put a pencil mark there. Okay, and we're gonna line up those little tick marks and glue it down like so. And then you can layer on top of your tag as you want. Open it up and burnish. And erase tick mark. So if you did it like this, like I did, you'll just have to go ahead and work with it on the page. And it's still doable. It's just a little bit more clunky, if that makes sense. Okay. All right, I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to actually do my tag on the other side and cut out my paper and put some measurements on for you so that it's easier to cut out. Okay, I'm ready to move on to the next part. I will tell you it was not fun putting this paper, this tag on after attaching it to the book, because once I sliced it, I had to go back and cut off this part. So if you're going to do a tag, this will be covered, but yeah, it was not fun slicing that off and then over once it was attached to the book. So if you're doing a tag, put the tag on first and then attach it to your book. Okay, so I've already done the right-hand side to show you what we're going to be doing on our book. So we have our closure, which is a tag or a bookmark. Here's our flaps. And then we're going to do a waterfall with a pocket. So I haven't done any embellishing, obviously, but I wanted you to see the right side is going to be exactly the same as the left, just different paper. Okay, so let's go ahead and get your paper cut. I don't remember if I gave you the measurements. Probably not. You're going to need 2 pieces that are... That's not the right one. Hold on. Yeah, 2 pieces that are 3 by 7.5. That's these. Okay. And then you're going to need 4 that are 2.5 by 1 1/4. And that's for the closure pieces. Okay. And I think I already gave you these measurements. I think 6 by 5 1/4. And we've got those all prepared. We scored them at half and then at 3/4. Okay, so what we're going to do is we have to attach the flaps, like this and this before we put our waterfall in. So these go down first. It is going to be easier if you cover them with your patterned paper first. So I did, I matted them and then I put paper on. So mine are going to look like this. Okay, so I matted it with an aqua color, that's shiny paper, and then I put my pattern paper on, and then when I flip it up, I'm just going to do a solid. I'm going to do the pink. Okay, so I wanted the paper to be on there first before we attach it to the book, just because it's so much easier. So let's go ahead and do the pink on the inside, so when the underside of the flap. And I can give you, I just do 1/8 of an inch shorter and an 1/8 of an inch shorter on the length and the width. Okay, and there we go. Okay, now this one, you have to be careful for the direction of your paper, because remember, one of them is going to be up and one of them is going to be down. Let me see, where's the other one? So this one had to have been corner rounded on the top part. This one is corner rounded on the bottom. So I just cut one piece and then I cut it in half. But don't forget to pay attention to the direction of your paper before you do your corner rounding. Okay, so I'll attach this piece to the front. That's going to be our top flap. If you don't have a paper that's directional, it doesn't matter. But mine were. Now, I don't know if you have watched the walkthrough, but I am, even though I'm using the same collection, I'm using different papers because I'm using my leftovers from my first one. And I did buy another collection. So the papers I'm using on this one are a little bit different. So I'll make sure I do a walkthrough of this one too, just so you can see that they'll be a little bit different because of the papers I chose. Okay, so that top flap is done. Make sure that you did miter the 1/2 inch. Now we'll do the bottom one. The underside is pink. The nice thing about the My Color cardstock is it's okay to use this, even though that's the branding strip in the color. It doesn't matter because it's going to be on the underside. So even though those words are there, so your paper ends up being just a hair bigger than 12 inches long because you don't have to cut that bottom part off really. Okay, underneath side first. Okay, and then, so this is going to be, the rounded part is toward the top. And then there's the bottom part of our picture. All right. So I'll attach these flaps, but then I want to go over something with you with the butterfly picture that I'm using to get it centered correctly. That big butterfly, you know, on the flaps that you see when you first open the book. Because the butterfly is not centered on that 12-inch page. So I'll show you what I did for that. Okay, so there's that. What we're going to do is attach, put glue on the 1/2 inch, and then one will go all the way to the bottom and one goes all the way to the top. Okay, so I did use different papers on this one. Here I have a rabbit in a basket, and this one's the birdhouse with the bird. This actually could have gone on the other side because this came from the same paper, and now that birdhouse, that's the other side. Yeah, I should have probably done it the other way, but too late now. Nobody will notice. Okay, here we go. We're going to glue this on, and then I'm going to kind of do a little backtrack before we do the waterfall. So I push it down so I can see the 1/4 inch gusset, so I can see that I'm lining it up correctly on the page without that gusset being in the way. And then I'm going to open it and give it a burnish. And I'm going to turn it upside down. I always glue better when I can see it better when it's closer to me. Okie dokie. And all the way to the top. And looks like it lines up pretty well. Open it up and give it a firm burnish so it's on nice and secure. So the bookmark that you do, I matted it with I want it to be durable to keep the flaps down. So I did mat it with a purple dot, and then I put the pattern paper on. You'll notice it's more than a 1/8 inch difference. I did want to see more of the purple. And then on the little piece, which I can't seem to find, oh, here it is. I also matted this. So I did the purple dot. I got glue on my hand. And then I matted it with another piece of paper. So it's just more durable as we slide that bookmark in and out for the closure. But I do want to glue this before I lose them. So I think I did go 1/8 of an inch smaller on this piece because it's such a small piece to begin with. So the mat is 1/8 inch smaller. Yeah, that one's definitely 1/8 inch smaller. So if this was 2.5 wide, we did 2 3/8 wide. If it was 1.5, no, it was 1 1/4 tall, I went 1 1/8 for the mat. And then we have the pattern paper on top. And I did another, yeah, it looks like about 1/8 of an inch shorter for that one too. Now, when you glue this, you're going to have to, here, let me finish this one real quick. But you're going to have to make sure you measure how high up these go and then you center them so that this can slide under. So if you put it down too far, you're going to be like, oh, crud, it's too short. So mine pretty much go to the top and to the bottom. I did make a mistake on the other one, so I had to make my bookmark smaller. So we'll see what happens on this one. Let's go ahead and do your mat. You don't have to do mats. I just thought because it was a closure piece that it needed to be a little bit more durable, because we're going to be pulling that in and out. Okay, and I do like to see a little bit more of the mat on some of my embellishments or my pieces that go with it. Just depends on where it's at in the book, I guess, but... And then this one is going to be centered like so. And this one's a lot more narrow just because I went back to look at the pieces I had left over, and I don't like to waste. And so this one's probably a little bit more narrow than what I would have normally done, but I can't have this beautiful paper go to waste. So I used it. So you mat to the measurements that you like. Okay, so you're going to want to center this on here. This is 6 inches, so you want to find the middle mark, which is 3. This is 2.5, so you want to go over 1 1/4 and line them up. Okay, so this is, I put one on, and then I kind of look to see, okay, where does this one need to go? And it is pretty much top to bottom, unless you make this shorter. And just put glue on like the bottom 1/4, bottom 4th. This one, top 4th. Okay. So I want to, before I do the waterfall, I want to talk to you about these 2 flaps. So we want to use this paper and cut the butterfly in half, but the butterfly is not centered. So you want to cut the butterfly in half with the body, okay? And it will still work out. We'll have to do some trimming, obviously, on the sides, but cut your paper so that it goes down the center of the butterfly. So let me do that real quick, because I didn't want my butterfly cattywampus. All right, let's see here. So this is close, okay? And you'll notice that, yep, one side is bigger than the other. We'll fix that. Now, I do want this to be matted, so I did use the pretty sparkly shiny paper. So I'm going to mat it first, and then I will put the pattern paper on. The mats that I did are 1/8 of an inch smaller. but I have a border down here that I had to account for. So these are 4 3/8, lied, 5 3/8 by 8 1/4. Yours might be a different length depending on if you used a punch or not. Okay, so if this is 8 1/4, let me see if I did it on my other book. I think I'm going to go, I think I want to do 1/4 of an inch so I can see more of the blue. So if this was 8 1/4, I'm going to have my butterfly be 8 inches. So I have to remember to take the same off the top as the bottom so that butterfly lines up, if that makes sense. Okay, so I want it to be 8 inches, but I got to get the full butterfly. So I am going to take 10, 9 1/2. I'm going to take 1 3/4 inches off the bottom. So I have to remember to take 1 3/4 inches off the bottom of the other one. 1 3/4. Okay, so I took 1 3/4. So obviously I got to take 1 3/4 off this because you don't want your butterflies to be like this. So now take 1 3/4 off the other piece on the bottom. Okay, so now they're still lined up, and now we need to take the same off the top. And so let me see if I like 1/4. Yeah, I'm gonna like 1/4. Okay, so right now my paper is 10 1/4, and I want it to be 8. So I'm gonna take 2 1/4 off the top. Let me just double check. 1/4, 1, 2. Yep, I'm gonna take 2 1/4 off the top. And the top of this one. So they still line up like so. Okay, so now we just need to do the width. So I take 1/4 off. So if this is 5 3/8, I want my paper to be 5 1/8. So remember, you're going to trim on the outside. So I want it to be 5 1/8. I'm going to cut off this side. Just little tricks here. I don't want you to accidentally mess up and ruin this pretty paper. So now that's 5 1/8, like so. And now when I cut this to 5 1/8, I take off this side. And then we glue those down. And then it'll be a match. Okay, wanted to make sure I went over that with you. I'll glue those down later though. So we are ready for the waterfall. So I have my pieces cut and ready to go over with you. So you're going to need 10 pieces that are 6 by 4 3/4 and 2 that are 7 by 3. So that's the 2 of them are for the little pockets, and these are for the waterfall pages. Okay, so let's go ahead and score those. Don't want to lose that. The pieces that are 7 by 3, place the 7 inches across the top. And we're going to score at 1/2 on each end, so 1/2 and 6 1/2. Rotate it one time and score it 1/2, and you'll do that to both pieces. Now your pieces that measure 6 by 4 3/4, you put the 4 3/4 across the top and just score at 1/2. And with waterfalls, you do not miter, so do not cut that 1/2 inch. Okay, so to prepare the pocket, We're going to miter the top 1/2 inch pieces at an angle. We're going to cut off the square in the corner at an angle. Don't cut into the corner. Okay. And we'll burnish those. And this is another one that you're probably going to want to put your pattern paper on first. It's just easier. Okay, so there's our bottom pocket. And now for all the waterfall pieces, don't miter and just burnish. So you'll have 5 pages on each of the waterfalls. Okay, so do that to all 5 pieces. All right, so we are going to open this up. Get this out of the way. And I'm going to go ahead and glue my pocket on the bottom after I have the pattern paper on. And then I'm going to start my waterfall at the top underneath that 1/4 inch gusset. And I'm going to make sure I line it up side to side. Okay. So when I do that, I have to decide what paper I want. And I'm not going to put pattern paper over the whole page for the waterfall because I don't want to waste, you know what I'm saying? And I kind of like this for my pocket. It says hair short, but maybe I'll go back and put a border on it. I think I might do that because I really like this paper. So what I'm talking about is I will cut a strip with this border punch and put it across the top so that I can use this paper because it's a little bit too short. And I like it. So this will be 5 7/8 long. And if you're not going to put a border strip on, 2 3/8 tall, but mine is actually 2 1/4. So mine's 1/8 of an inch too small, but I'm going to make it work. So what did I say? 5 7/8. Cut that. And so, that's not enough. So when I put this on, I'm going to put it more toward the bottom. And then my punch will cover up that excess on the top. And that's another way of not wasting paper. Okay. All right. That is really pretty color green. So now I have to decide what paper I want for my waterfall. And we cut it out as one sheet. We don't cut them separately yet. So I need a 5 7/8 inch wide piece. So I'm going to look through my papers and see if there's one I like. I have this piece left. And then I could do different. It depends if you want the whole scene. If it doesn't bother you not to have the whole scene, you can cut them separate. I don't want to waste that, and I kind of like that picture. I'll find another piece. Hold on. Let's do... let me see here. I gotta find just the right one. Huh. Well, I'm gonna go with this one. Well, I don't want to overlap that though. Oh my gosh. You gotta pick just the right one though. Sorry for the crinkle. Not that one. Not that one. Well, shucks. Sorry it's taken so long. I just got to get the right one. Here we go. This is the one I want. I want this one. Okay, so let me cut out the branding strip thingy. All right, so I want a 5 7/8 inch strip. So I'm going to cut it. I want this side. So let me go 5 7/8. The cutter I have, it's hard to see where the 6 inch and the 5 7/8 inch is. So it's just easier for me to use my ruler, mark it, and then cut it. It's kind of a pain, but I really like the cutter other than that. Okay, 5 7/8. Let me just double check that I like that. Yep. Okay. So you're going to need a piece. Hang on. Let me get my book. So I can tell you how long to cut that strip. I wasn't planning on putting the pattern paper on with you, but it's just going to be easier. So that top piece is 4 1/8, and then I need 4 more. 2, 4. Yep. So you're going to cut a piece that's 8 1/8 inches long, if you're doing it like that. 8 1/8 inches long. And I want the pattern, so I'm going to cut it off the top. All right. So this will be the top page that I see. So the first one is going to be 4 1/8, and then you cut the rest in 1 inch strips. So this will be the top piece. And now 1 inch strips. One. Two. 3 and 4. Okay. So now we just keep these in order so you don't get them glued on. So you can see, remember which way they go for the pattern paper. So let's do the 4 1/8, and I'm not putting pattern paper on the back or even a solid, because when you put your picture on there, that adds enough bulk that you don't want it to get too thick. And I might add some ephemera to this to kind of spice up this first page a little bit. Okay. All right, so there's my top page. This will be the one right underneath of it. And so we go pretty much as close to the bottom. I mean, you still want a little bit of a border, but for the pattern to flow a little bit nicer, you need to go as far down as you can, because the flap on top of it will kind of cover up the design a little bit. So I can still see, okay. And I'll show you what I mean by covering it up a little bit. So when these get glued down, you back up the 1/2-inch pieces, and so you won't see all of the pattern paper. Like, it won't be like this. It's going to be like this. Now, if you do a smaller piece, if you do a 1/2-inch strip instead, that can take care of that problem if you want to. So do a 1/2 inch instead of an inch, and you could probably see the design better, actually. I don't know why I decided 1 inch. I think 1/2 inch would make more sense. That was kind of, I should have done that. Oh well. Oh well, live and learn, I guess. Maybe I did a 1/2 inch or in the past and just screwed this one up. Or maybe I just didn't know. It's okay. That rabbit's so cute over here on this side. And the last one. Okay, we're ready to assemble our waterfall. So I'm going to turn it upside down so that I can see it better when I glue. And we start with that top piece that had the full sheet on it. And we're going to glue it right almost up to the score, but not all the way. And you want to make sure that it's lining up side to side and doesn't get crooked. Usually I use my scoreboard as a guide, but on this book I can't because of the width of the book. I can't bump it up against my scoreboard like I would need to, so I'm eyeballing it. Okay, that looks about right. So now we bump up the next one right next to that 1/2 inch. And it's going to go right underneath of it. Yeah, 1/2 inch. Now it's bugging me in my head. I'm like, why didn't I go a 1/2 inch strip instead of 1? That would have taken, you would have seen the pattern, the picture better. And I could have saved a little paper on top of it. Too late now, Rannells. Next one. We bump up right up against the previous 1/2 inch. Making sure we're still checking that it's lining up side to side. It is kind of easy to get off when you're doing it this way. Like sometimes it starts to go more toward one side than the other, so you got to be careful. 2 more to adhere. go. Give it a real firm burnish because you want these to lay as flat as possible. I'll go ahead and burnish them again once I have them all attached, just so that they lay down more flat. Last one. Okay. Okay, I'm going to turn it sideways. Burnish and burnish. Yeah, that looks dumb. I wish I would have done a 1/2 inch. Ooh. Okay. Now I'm going to add my pocket down here. Don't go over the score mark. So then really all we have left is the inside cover and the back inside cover. And that's it. Our book is done. That's not true. I got to add the notebook in the center, but I'm talking about the main book. The main part of it. And some of you may not want to add a book, and that's totally fine. Maybe you just want it to be a folio with no holes in the spine to hold a writing journal. All right. So there's that. We'll put pattern, paper here. Okay. Nice, nice, nice. So we just need something here. And then we need our something here. And I do use the envelope punch board. And then we just attach a notebook here in the center. Okay. So let's prep our next set of papers. All right. The measurements for the inside pockets. The accordion pocket on the front and the double layered pocket on the back. One of them is going to be at 5.5 by 12. One is at 3 1/8 by 9, and one is at 5.5 by 2. So those top three measurements are for the inside front. The one at 6.5 by 7 3/4, and one at 6.5 by 5. That'll be for the stacked pockets on the back. So let's go ahead and do our scoring. I'll do the 6.5 by 7 3/4 first. So with the 6.5 inches across the top, you're going to score at 1/2 and at 6. Rotate it once and score at 1/2. So that'll be our long pocket. The next one that measures 6.5 by 5, put the 6.5 across the top and do the same scoring. 1/2 at 6, rotate it once, and score at 1/2. Okay, the inside accordion pocket, the piece that measures 5.5 by 2, just go ahead and put the 5.5 across the top, and we're just going to do a 1/2 inch score. The piece that's 3 1/8 by 9, put the 3 1/8 across the top, and we're going to do 2 scores. The first one is at 1/2, and the second one is at 5/8. So there's going to be a slight gusset, but not much of one. Whoopsie. Now for the accordion pocket, place the 12 inches across the top, and we're going to be scoring 3 times on each end. So we'll do a 1/2 inch score, a 1 inch, and a 1 1/2. Do that on both ends. So 1/2, 1, and 1 1/2. So now we'll put the short side across the top, the 5.5, and we're going to make the same 3 score marks. We're going to do it at 1/2, at 1, and at 1 1/2. Okay, so that's all of our scoring. Now I did use a magnet on this book. So that's just, you can choose to do a magnet or you can do a different type of closure. I'm going to cut out the 9 squares on the bottom, and I'm going to just go straight up We want to get rid of that crease from where we did our scoring. Cut that out. And we might have to go back and trim just a little bit so that there's not any overlap when we're trying to put our accordion folds in there. Okay, straight across, get rid of that little bump. I can see a little bit of the line from the scoring, so I want to get that off there. All right, so we'll start by doing the score closest to the inside. We'll go back, and then we alternate back, front. What did I do with my, there it is. Okay, so if we did this one to the back, the next one will come to the front. And then the last one will go to the back. So there is, so you have depth to your pocket. Okay, we'll do the same thing to the other side. The score closest to the inside goes toward the inside. Then we're gonna do the next score toward the outside. And the last one goes to the inside. Okay. So we'll do the same thing on the bottom 3 score marks. Let's go up. Then we'll come down. And I can tell already we're going to have to do a little bit of trimming on this one because I see it buckling a little bit. And then up. Okay. So I'm going to slightly cut off just a little bit on the side here on both ends. Let's see if that's going to be better. I might need to do it a little bit more. This down here looks okay, but this side still looks a little long. Now what I like to do is place the fold. So here's my mountain piece right here. I'm folding that down toward the center. I have the mountain piece down toward the center, and then I'm going to overlap them. And yep, I'm going to have to do some trimming. I can tell it's going to be too tight. We don't want it to pucker. So you trim off whatever you need to make it lay flat. So I'm taking the mountain piece, putting it toward the center. Mountain piece toward the center. Now I'm going to bring up the bottom and then bring over the side. So let's do that over here too. Bring that over and up and down. So that's how I'm going to glue it. Okay, so I'm just going to put a little dab of glue here in the corner just to hold it. And I'm going to get a little clothespin so it can dry. And now I'll do the same thing to the other side. Just put a little dab of glue here in this corner. Bring that over. And let's put a clothespin on that. Okay. I'm going to move that to the side. Let's go ahead and do our burnishing on the flap that will be on top of the accordion pocket. So there's one. And now we need to do that real little 1/8 inch gusset. Got to score that one, or burnish that one now. Sometimes it's easier for me just to take my hands along the score mark first and then go and use my burnishing tool. There we go. Now you can corner around the flap if you want. I believe I did. Let's see. I did. So I'm going to go ahead and get my corner rounder and just do like so. Whoop. Okay. And then the last piece for the front is the closure. So just go ahead and score, or excuse me, burnish that 1/2 inch. Now sometimes I forget and I put my paper down before I do the magnet, and I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually tuck this 1/2 inch into this piece right here, but I'm only going to put glue on the top right in here. Okay, so I'm going to put it in that little space, and I want to center it like so. Let me measure just in case. If this is 9, I need it to be at 4.5. That does look about right. So I'm eyeballing it. If you wanted to use the centering ruler, that is fine too. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of put it over here so I get it, make sure I get it in the right spot. Like so. That does not look like it's in the center to me, but okay. So I'm going to put a little marking here so I don't forget to put the, what do you call it, the magnet here. I don't want to forget to put that on before I put my pattern paper on. And I'm also going to put a little note here, magnet, so that I don't forget. So you can put your pattern paper on first to make it easier. And we are going to attach this right to the edge of that paper right before the spine, like so. Okay, and then we'll glue, let's go ahead and miter this 1/2 inch piece. Whenever your paper goes from the very top to the very bottom, that's when you really want to make sure that you miter so that you don't have any overhang. And we'll glue that 1/2 inch down all the way to the edge. So then our closure will be like so. Okay, so you can go ahead and put your glue down your base piece, then the top piece, and then just don't forget to put your magnet on the back and the top before you put your pattern paper on. Okay. All right, so I'll put my pattern paper on before I glue mine down. And so the last thing we need to do is that back, the last with the paper anyway, then we'll do the holes for the book. So because this is a pocket, we're going to cut out the squares in the corner at an angle. And we miter, at least I'm going to miter. Go ahead and burnish. And I am going to get my envelope punch board to give it a tab. If you don't have one, you could cut a tab. You could use a circle punch. It does not have to be the envelope punch board. And actually, maybe I will just, no, I'll use it. I'm going to say maybe for a variety, I have a punch that's kind of like a tab. But I'll go ahead and do the punch board. Okay, same thing for the pockets here. And we'll burnish this. And you don't want to waste paper. So I'm not going to put my pattern paper all the way down because I don't want to waste paper. So when I glue this on, then I will tuck the paper underneath the pattern paper. So let me show you how I did the punch board. Let me get mine. So I wanted a tab on this side and one on this side. So with my tabs behind, they're tucked under. I'm going to go ahead and place this corner in the center of the opening so that we get that little ridge here. And then I'm going to go to, what did I go to? 2 1/4, I think. I think I went to 2 1/4. Yeah, I went to 2 1/4. And I flipped it upside down. I hope I'm doing that right. Is that right? Yes. And now I'm going to trim this off. Okay, before I do that, let's do the other one. So this time we're going to put the left-hand side in the center piece here and center it. And now we'll move this. We don't have to flip this one over. This one goes over to 2 1/4. Okay. And now you're going to need a blade. And a ruler. And we're just going to slice straight across. Okay, now I do sometimes like to do the other end in the punch board also, so that it has that little ridge. So I'm just going to lift this up over my punch board here because I can't get it flat, like so. Let's trim this one off. And straight across. Now I have a little rough edge there, so I'm just going to take my file here, like so. I am going to angle cut this piece and this one too. It looks kind of weird with that shape on there. Okay, so now I do want to do the same thing on this one. I want to put it back in my punch board, centering it in that middle piece, but I have to lift it up over here on the side. Okay, and let's go ahead and fix that one too, the 1/2 inch piece. All right. Now when I put my pattern paper on, I did not want the tab covered. So when I put my pattern paper on, I measured from side to side and I stopped. My pattern paper ended up being 3 7/8 inches tall. And then I put my pattern paper in the punch board too. And then these get layered like so. And then those go on the back cover. The back flap. And we glue that all the way down on the bottom like so. Okay, so I will go ahead and glue this one on top. And all the way to the bottom. Give it a good burnish, and then you can put your pattern paper on. And then we glue that piece all the way to the bottom, and we check it side to side, and then we can attach it to our book. Okay. All right. There we go, like so. And just give that a good burnish, and your back cover is done. We just got to put our pattern paper on. So it's probably hard to see with this color. I don't know. Can you see that I'll put my pattern paper on and it'll be easier. I'm going to go ahead and then pattern paper these and glue those down after I put that on. So let me put my pattern paper on and I will be back. So I have been covering my book with pattern paper. I have a lot of it done and ready to go. It is now time. Oh, I was going to tell you, when you put your closure on, I used ribbon, and I could not find, I had leftover of this crinkle. I love this stuff, the blue crinkle. I can't find what I do with the leftovers. I know I have another yard, and I don't know what I did with it. So this also is from Country Craft Creations, and I like using this for the closure too. It's like a netting tool, kind of polka dot, and they have that in the store. But I put glue on my book and wrapped it around, and then I put my pattern paper on the top of that. So that's how I did that. But it is time to put our book inside. Now, I used a pre-made book. So I already had this, so I did not have to put one together. They would be super easy to put together. Just take paper, fold it in half, use cardstock for the cover. You don't even need to staple it if you're going to use the elastic on there, or you could staple it, or if you do the threading you can do that, but it was just as easy for me to use a pre-made one. So what I did is, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 score marks. So on the third one in the center is where I'm going to place 2 marks. I'm going to center my book, and I'm going to use a pencil so I know where to punch holes. Okay, so I'm going to say that I just need to mark that this is one end, and this is the other one. So it looks like it's about a 1/2 inch from the end, and I am going to use my crocodile, and I'm just going to lift that up, and I'm going to make sure it's centered on that middle score. And I'm using the larger hole. Okay, so there's one. And now I'll punch the hole through the other one. Again, I want to center it on that middle score mark. I keep moving it. Okay. So now I'm going to get just regular elastic cord. Let's see, where did I put it? Huh. Oh, here it is. Nope, that's not it. What did I do with it? Oh, for Pete's sake, now I can't find my elastic cord. Did I put it someplace else? Huh. Well, let's see. I have silver, gold. I should have white somewhere. I have white, but this one's not big enough. What did I do with that? All right, well, I have black. I don't really want to use black. Here, I have this. Okay, I found some. Huh. I know I had one open. Maybe I used it all and forgot about it. Okay, let's move on here. So let me get a piece of white. Okay. And you can use it any color, but I thought being as that was white, it made sense to use a white cord. And it is elastic. I gotta find the end. There we go. So I do want it to be taut. So I'm going to just place, you'll see the band on the outside. That doesn't bother me. I hope that doesn't bother you. And I'm gonna say about like so. So I'll measure this here and let you know how long it is. Now, because I only have one set of holes, this is how I do it. If I had like 2 or 3, there's a different way of stitching it so that it looks nice and you don't have to see all the things on the outside. Okay, so now I'm going to tie this in a knot tightly. I do want it to be tight. And I have extra than here that I'll have to cut off. And I'm just going to hold that. And I'm just tying it like so. That should be tight enough. And I don't need to do another knot. That one's oh my gosh. Hold on. I want to put brads in. No, let me get this out. Ay, ay, ay. You don't have to do brads, but I want brads. Not brads, eyelets. Let me get, sorry about that. Huh, I'm sitting here looking right at them too, and I was, well, you definitely don't need to tie it more than once because it's a good knot. Okay, hold on. Sorry, fast forward this. I didn't mean to do that. And I don't know another way to loosen this up besides putting this picker thing in there. I might have to cut it and do another one. I don't want to waste it though. Huh. If I had my nails, but I don't anymore. I think it's coming. There we go. It's loosening up. Yay. Okay, let's take that bad boy out. As far as measuring goes though, it is 12. It's about 18 inches long. I am going to put eyelets in. So I have the eyelets that have the ring that goes on the top. So it's got a nicer closure. And I'm just gonna line that up. There we go. And put another one in the other end. Whoopsie. I am all thumbs, I swear. And it's kind of cold down here, so my hands are a little bit, don't want to work with me very well. Okay. All right, now let's try that again. Let's put the elastic cording in. And we're going to tie it tight in the center. Oh my gosh. Okay, I need another pair of hands. Oh my gosh. I'm telling you what. I'll just have to do it very carefully. There we go. I don't want to let go until it's tight. All right, I'm going to trim this up. I don't want it to be that long. I do leave mine a little bit, like an inch on each end, just in case it were to loosen up. I could give it a pull. And then I already put my decorations. I just used paper and some of the extra chipboard ephemera pieces. I did put a pocket on the inside, covers. Okay, and now you just find the center. And it goes right like so. And there you have it. And we've got a nice folio here. I just need to decorate the front. Let me tie this. This ties really nice too, just like that other crinkle. Nice. All right, there. And I did put a little pocket on the back with a little card. All right, so I think this will be super handy, and I think it's a really good gift too. So I'm just going to finish by adding some of the flowers. I have a couple of the flat back acrylics here, so I will finish putting the last touch on it, and I will add a picture to the end. So this one is the paper is the same collection, but I did use a little bit different papers on the front. And on the inside, just I used a little bit of my leftovers here and there. If I find my ribbon that I can't find right now, I will add some here and there. Oh, there, I found it. Oh my gosh. It was in between right here. So I will go, I will go back and add some things using these fibers. I can't believe I found it now that I already put this white one on. I think I wanted the blue one. Oh, well, I'll make it work. All right, I'll come back with a picture, but if you have questions, comments, whatever, leave them in the box down below, and I will get back with you as soon as I can. The products will be linked. Thank you for coming to my channel, and if you haven't, please subscribe. Thanks, everybody.